I think we're
Hello,
back.
everybody. Thank you for joining us in session 1 of Playtime number 5. Jossam, give us a quick recap of your chat in session 1.
Yeah, no, really enjoyed that. I felt, lots of things to discuss, especially when segregating esports and gaming on the investment side of things. Esports, lots to do with games and teams and the competitive side of things. We have our experience with Royal Youth and the team side, and obviously when you look at investing into a team, if you're not winning, then you obviously have to open up to different revenue streams. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it. It's not going to work, and that's where investors start to bleed. Right, that's where the bleeding comes from, essentially, when people think about teams.
And then, I think because that's where most people specifically go to immediately when you talk about gaming or now esports. They go to teams. They don't think about the infrastructure. They don't think about the technology. They don't think about the management side or it's a massive job creator, right? Esports industry in and of itself is a massive job creator. Gaming is a massive job creator in its separate side. So gaming creates more technical white collar jobs because the blue collar jobs are more physical, where actually esports is marrying the white and blue collar jobs because you have technical high skilled jobs, but also unskilled physical worker that is also required. So it's a massive economy of scales when you look at them. Because they're both massive job creators and big business sectors. But let's not forget, gaming is a $197 billion industry, and esports is just about 1, maybe 2 this year. So, we're talking a factor of almost 80, 90 times.
That is the bigger bubble, right? So you have, obviously the technologies that are out there, and some of the things that we were talking to with Chris is the virtual experiences and how the merge between the two are really taking effect. And so, what's up, Jason?
Hey, perfect timing, and literally the segue into session 2.
Gaming. Let's go.
Our guest, Jason Chapman. So, how you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great.
Right before you introduce yourself, I'm gonna take off, Jason. But you guys have a good one.
Hey, take care.
I'll be watching you on Twitch.
I love it.
Awesome. Jason, thanks for being with us. Everybody meet our good friend Jason. He's now in Colorado. I'm based here in Los Angeles, so happy times for both of us out here. It's changing into summertime. It's getting hot. I know it's a little different there in Colorado, but how you doing?
I'm doing great. Had a good 4th with family and friends, and hopefully all those, Americans watching enjoyed their 4th of July as well. And for our non-American audience, I would encourage you to come to the States for the 4th sometime. It is a good time.
Yeah. For our friends in Dubai, we just had Independence Day here. So all the fireworks that happened for you guys in March and April, we just got ours here yesterday, the day before. So real fun times. And literally segueing into that, when everybody's home at such a crazy time, and here we are in gaming and everything, you can't help but gamify everything. I just started seeing people on yesterday's LCS League of Legends stream throw up fireworks and this and that, and like that little aspect of interactive, thought, and, wouldn't have been there 6 months ago because we're all at home. We're all getting interactive with our streams and cameras, and even Zoom calls are now becoming like beach destinations. So I would argue we wouldn't have even gamified that little aspect 6 months ago.
I completely agree. I think we're finding totally new ways to gamify things and also kind of break down the barrier of players and viewers. There's a big theme there of, we're moving into a generation where people want to be more involved in two-way media rather than one-way media. Hey, I don't want to just sit and watch Netflix for 12 hours. I would much rather go play games, which I actually can change the environment I'm watching and viewing. And so that's a big theme, actually, we're really excited about. So you're hitting the nail on the head, Kevin.
Yeah, and I have a feeling we're gonna jump around a little bit, but also jump like way forward, quantum leap, which is what we did. We went from an intro into talking about two-way entertainment, which is a huge factor of it. But really quickly, just to get it going, and we did jump forward. Introduce yourself in your words. Introduce Convoy, if I'm saying that, I hope properly. Convoy Ventures properly. You guys are based out of Colorado, but I know you do some things in the gaming space, which is international. So give us a little bit of a brief.
Yeah, so the story of Convoy is we launched the fund in early 2019. So it's an early stage fund where we only invest into minority stakes into early stage companies in gaming. And we particularly focus on the technology layer, platforms, infrastructure plays, less so on direct content deals. So the difference between that is saying, hey, I want to invest into the camera that shoots the movie, not the movie itself. So that's kind of the way we look at the space. The backgrounds on how we launched the fund and the three partners on the fund is one of them is my brother. So his name is Josh. He came to us, me and Jackson, who's essentially like another brother to me. I've known him for almost 20 years now, I guess. And he pitched us and said, hey, look, I think there's an opportunity to start a fund in early stage gaming. We should look into it. Jackson and I at the time were working in product research at IBM. We had worked with gaming clients previously and interacted with several of the large AAA players in the space. And so essentially we thought, hey, let's attack this industry a little bit differently than most are looking at it and take our previous expertise, which is quite technical, and find technical products in the industry. And so we pitched a bunch of gaming founders, which were our first LPs, which is really, really great. And they all were crazy enough to join this train with us. And here we are 15 companies later in our portfolio. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail because you guys had an idea, but you didn't say, let's go build a fund for gaming. You had a very specific niche that you went after, which was early stage. And also you had an idea. And I know from our previous conversation, you said it was something like a year or 2 years in the works, right?
It was. Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is, I sort of sped through and made it sound very easy. So those on the call who are building,
the bite-sized clip, like they say on Twitch, clip that.
Yeah, clip it. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also not trying to overskirt the amount of people that helped us get where we are, including my wife, who is our biggest fan, I think, to date. But we launched the fund idea probably in the beginning of 2017. And so at that time, Josh, Jackson, and I were also looking at how do we put some angel money into the space. So think of small checks. And we quickly found two things, which was interesting. One is gaming is at the time, it was about $120 to $130 billion market. It's now surpassed 150. It is a huge opportunity with very, very, very few dedicated funds. And so that was interesting to us because if you look at like fintech or if you look at even traditional media, there's tons of managers that are focused on those spaces, and some of them are smarter than I ever will be. And I'm glad that they're dedicated to those industries. But when we looked at gaming, we saw there were very, very few managers focused on it. So we thought, hey, there's a lot of demand, very little supply when it comes to dedicated venture capital for this space. So that was one thing that checked our box. And then we saw the most of the venture dollars were focused on content. And that is not my background, nor I think our strong suit when it comes to space. Our background is in technology, right? And that is where we are sort of differentiated, is that two of the three managing partners were engineers. And so we approached things a little bit. Most people, even our due diligence process, we spent a lot of time with the developers and the CTOs. And so in 2017, we started a newsletter. Really quickly, we got about 100 family offices and venture capital funds and said, hey, look, we're going to start looking for the space for our own personal money. We're going to share deals with you as you see fit. And that sort of spiraled into us deal scouting for a bunch of funds. And then eventually we had enough people saying, just go raise your own fund. And so we got our first LPs that way. But yeah, I left my job in 2018, had no idea what kind of salary I was going to make, took a huge salary cut, going from research at IBM to doing what I do now. And it's been a fantastic ride, but definitely could not have done it without the support of, our earliest LPs, which were huge game changers for us and are still in our corner to this day, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Do you want to, I think a good segue would be not for the investor side, but the gaming side. What were those few LPs, or not all of them, but maybe a shining star, and what specifically did it do? You guys are technology guys. So what is it that in gaming or esport, gaming specifically, that they showed you that, got signed on, and now that first success was started, the proverbial spark was given, and then I guess you can segue it, and I'll just ask a two-parter. So what was the first spark, and then what did it lead into to giving you, okay, we're picking up some traction, now we're going to announce the fund? Or was it at the same time? Was it in conjunction with? And how much clout did that first one give you?
Yeah, the first spark, and this, make sure I'm getting your question correctly, the spark to start the fund, or sort of to catalyst to get it going?
Because you said the LPs, the early LPs were with you. Was it one or two of those that were the spark, or was it the spark of, the idea of there's a limited number of funds out there doing this, so we're going to do it? And then you got a bit of luck, you got a bit of happiness going with the first LPs to go off.
Yeah.
And then what were those first LPs?
I mean, so what I would always tell people when they're starting anything, right, is and actually a guy who's one of the best venture investors in the world, in my opinion, is a guy named Fred Wilson. And he wrote about this recently in his newsletter, which everyone on this, if they're interested in being an investor, I would encourage you to subscribe. He has a lot of daily thoughts that I find very insightful. And he recently wrote this concept of crawl, walk, run. And I think a lot of times we get too focused on not incremental progress, right? And so the way we forced that incremental progress for our own fund is the partners put in all our capital into one, and we actually fronted the first couple investments personally, right, that we rolled up into our fund.
Yeah.
So that was the forced spark. I think the continued spark really was once we said to our other LPs, and this is the first question they asked, is like, are you in this, right? Are you vested into this? And, getting to look them in the eye and say, hey, I put a pretty significant portion of my personal net worth into this, and looked in the eyes and say, okay, that's great. If you're going to risk your own money, I think it's a little bit more justified for me that you risk my own money as well, right? So first spark, I think, was us just determining that this is the right idea. We're going to push our money in. And the second was we got a bunch of those LPs to come in, who then also brought in a bunch of great deals for us because, it's classic in any industry, right? Everyone wants to put on their deck that this founder from this industry who exited for a couple $2 billion is in their fund, an investor in them. And that's usually the first person people will go to for funding, right?
Right.
And so, we thought of how do we make our alliance more powerful? Well, we want to get as many founders into it as possible as well. And so that's been great for us personally. It's also been really great for the fund because our deal flow noticeably jumped when we started bringing those people in to be in part of our cohort.
And did you feel that name dropping at the time was necessary or less necessary than it is now? Because as you see, everybody's getting into the industry from gaming to software dev to game publishing, media, content. I feel like it's become a name dropping society, but at the same time, we're not even at, critical mass of 5 or 10% yet. So why do we need to name drop? I'm just worried that we're headed down the blockchain path too quickly because we don't need to. I lived that blockchain stuff from 2011. I'm a very early investor in the technology. We built them. But that was the problem in 2018, 19. Everybody became an advisor. Everybody became a hero. Well, guess what happened during the COVID crisis? Everybody became an esports or gaming advisor. Everybody that was a tech or a legal assistant or somebody switched over, read a book or something on esports and gaming, and all of a sudden says, I know about gaming publishing rights, and I know about the indie investor, support the indie developer. So, what does that really even mean?
Yeah, it is interesting, right? And you're hitting what the kind of the phrase tourist capital. I think that a lot of, and I can speak mainly from the venture side, but I can speak a little bit to the founder side too, is a lot of people had their portfolio and they looked at it and part of it was in flames in a bad way, not on fire in a good way. And they're looking and saying, okay, I'm about halfway through allocating my first fund. How can I pivot to allocate to sectors that do have growth potential that will do better during an environment like COVID? And a lot of people turn their eyes to gaming, and that is great for the industry, in my opinion, because there's a lot of people that are wanting to learn more, that want to be exposed to it. And that is giving founders who are launching companies more opportunities, because currently, the way it is, there's not enough capital to go around for especially early stage companies in gaming for dedicated funds, right? And so that part is great. The flip side of that is it sometimes can also pump up valuations, like as you've seen in blockchain, to illogical, logical ways, right? And I think that is something we're closely watching. We haven't seen it happen quite the same way yet in gaming.
But in esports you do. But in esports you do.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not a negative Nancy. I'm the most positive person my friends will ever meet. I say my friends because you got to meet me first. But the reality is that esports is not so. There's a lot of inflated valuations. I'm very worried as an investor. I'm very worried for my shareholders, what they're asking me to invest in. And I'm working with a cautious eye, because it's coming from a place of disparity, not of disparity of we need this, of they see the 100x, 200x moment. Whereas something like 3D printing, we're just not ready for it yet. So that 3D printing moment in esports is like VR. VR, AR, we're just not there yet, right? We're about a year, 5 years away maybe. But then all of a sudden, you got one good thing in microtransactions, and really only one person is killing it, and that's like Fortnite, right? So, you got a bunch of Candy Crushes, you got a bunch of those gaming mobile apps, but the esports side of what gaming looks like for esports, there's a lot of inflation, if you ask me. And there's a lot of stuff that potential new investors have to navigate properly.
Absolutely. I think, when it comes to esports organizations, there's definitely a plethora of examples of orgs that have been run well and orgs that have been run poorly. We have not invested yet to date in an esports organization. Not that I don't think there's opportunities to do that. I think it has to do with the valuations and the way they make money, right? And so typically, if you do like a blended average across sports, usually they're trading between 4 to 5 times top line revenue. That's kind of like where you would be looking to trade and value a sports team. Esports, some of them trade more in that 10 to 50 times top line revenue. And then we look into how are they making money, and a lot of them make money very similarly to the way normal sports teams do. And so either they need to change their model to make it more scalable to justify such a valuation, which you're kind of betting on saying this growth is headed this way, or they're just overvalued and you're paying hype money, which is, I think we've seen both. And so, for us, that's something we're keenly aware of as well. I don't see us changing investing to esports organizations, even to our second fund, which we're launching later this year. But we'll see. It would have to be a really good reason, and it'd have to have a good moat.
No, I think the way we've always approached our 10 years ago when we were miners in blockchains or cryptocurrency miners, we were the guys with the pick and shovel. And I've always lived my business career after college, after the financial crisis, tried to be the guy or the company that sells the pick and the shovel. And proverbially, that could mean software, that could mean e-commerce services, that could mean, technical services. It always comes back to technical services, highly skilled technical services that look like products and masked as products through, SaaS models and different type of white label solutions for APIs to come in, whether it's an application or a piece of gambling. Now we're seeing all these are technologies that can be white labeled. So gamification technology is where we always have focused ourselves. And that's just because of the inflation of it. No, that's not to say we haven't invested in esports. The one investment we made in esports team, we never made a large money payout for, even though we were one of the best teams in the world. And it's very difficult to make money. But gaming, you need to solve problems. In gaming, you need to offer solutions that solve problems. So if it's a new game, that's a new game. That's not, you're solving a top 10 apps problem. But many of the solutions, and maybe you can talk about it, is do you have or have you looked at companies that are interesting to you that kind of give you the whole pie? So I'm just going to go to your portfolio. I'm just going to name a name, right? So is Loot Cakes or Origami, is that a whole solution in your opinion? or are they solving one piece of a larger pie? And do you understand what I mean by that? Like,
Absolutely. Right. And so when we look at, most portfolio companies, we do look and say, what's the problem you're solving? Right. And when we invest, we're typically investing at the stage of, you've built a product, you've maybe got one customer, you've proven that someone will pay you something for that thing that you've built, and you need money for growth and scale, and you need us to help you with hopefully connections in the industry, right? And so let's take Loot Cakes, for example, which I actually sit on the board of. And what they help studios with is UA, right? So user acquisition, which is a very, very large line item for mobile game companies, right? So especially mobile, which is what they focus in, also for PC and console, but UA specifically for mobile is very interesting. And what they do is they help the large mobile studios find big spenders, right? Because in a free-to-play world, which is, and for the audience that doesn't know free-to-play, it's a game where it doesn't cost you anything to download. You download it, you play it, and they're going to try to upsell you with either cosmetic items, as you were referring to, in-app purchases, battle passes, or 1,000 different ways you can monetize somebody. But that's generally the concept here is, I have an offering. I expect that between 1 to 3, maybe 5% of the players who come through my doors are actually going to pay me money. They help you find those people. So Are they a holistic approach? They're one of the approaches for a very, very large spend problem. And so I would argue that what they crush and what they help you do is they're going to help you find big spenders. They're not going to help you go find the 98% of non-spenders. That's not what they're trying to do. So Loot Cakes, so to answer your question, like UA is the problem. They help solve a portion of it. Origami, they're a cloud-based gaming engine, and they would be a little bit more of a holistic approach of saying, I need an engine to build a game that's optimized for cloud gaming, which we are big believers in the future. There's a lot of different ways people talk about cloud gaming. Matthew Ball did a good essay on cloud gaming, which was interesting to me, which I'd encourage you guys to go read. But yeah, so does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, definitely. And actually the UA is such a big piece of it. And there's so much work to be had there for many multiple decades to come, because if you're going to be able to solve that problem best, you're not going to be able to service all of the companies that are going to need your service.
No.
You know what I mean? So I think that's exactly what I was talking about. That's exactly what I was talking about in an aspect of what seems small. Like you're just talking about UA, UX, UI, but those three, UA in this example are so massively, needed. No one is solving that problem right now in esports. I'll tell you that. No one in esports, just to segue, go back and forth from gaming and esports, is that no one is solving that. They're just hoping that their next game is the solver to the user acquisition. So look at Amazon and Crucible. Total flop. That they didn't need to spend it. Look, you didn't spend the money to get the user acquisition. And opposite to Valorant, right? The opposite to Valorant, and where they went out there. You guys are solving that problem for the gaming side. So I wanted to give that analogy for esports people out there.
Absolutely.
That's what it looks like.
Absolutely. And something that I think which has been effective for, just like frame the size of the industry, right? Like, so gaming's $152 billion industry, depending on how you cut it. And then esports is between 1 to 1.5, right? So it's around 1% of the industry.
Right.
I think it's going to continue to grow, and I'm super bullish on it. But it's really good to frame it from a TAM perspective, just how much bigger gaming is than esports.
Yes.
One thing that we have seen that is really interesting, and then a lot of success stories, has been the use of influencers for launching new titles, specifically titles that they're trying to make an esport. Apex Legends did this really, really well. Valorant did this really well, where they pay a ton of streamers to say, you're going to play this for the next 24 hours, like nonstop. And so everyone watching is going to see you, and you're like, oh my gosh, like my idol, my streaming idol, my gaming idol playing this game. I'm going to go play the game.
Right.
Actually, a portfolio company that I will give a shameless plug to is a company called Opera Event, and they've done this very, very well. Opera Event, yeah. So Opera Event does this.
Is that OP? Where they just want to give them the proper check. Is OP?
Yep, OPERA, and then next word is event. Yep, Opera event. And what they do, which is really, really interesting, is so if you look at groups like Apex, like what they had to do is say, Kevin, you're a famous streamer, you've got 1 million followers, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to pay you, 25 grand for tomorrow to stream this game, right? That's the kind of deal they had to do. They had to do one-offs.
Yeah.
What Opera event does, which is a little different, is they actually say, okay, all right, Machine Zone, Amazon, you want to run an ad and you want to get just these number of impressions, they'll actually cut that up and offer that to smaller streamers, and 10,000 streamers will actually go run with that advertisement. We've seen that work really well with new titles.
Nice.
Because there's something interesting about smaller audiences that are way more loyal than, hey, I've got 1 million followers, right? You feel dedicated, you kind of feel bonded to a small streamer that you're following. So that's something that we've seen work really well when it comes to UA, kind of for titles that are trying to become esports. Right. So,
what do you think of different aspects of technology enhancing the current technology that we're in? So I'll give you an example of blockchain is the buzzword, or tokenization, right? That's my personal favorite. Personally, I not just blockchain head. We built different platforms that are tokenized. We own and operate one of the first, I don't ever like to say the first, but technically the first tournament hosting platform on the blockchain, Yamzu in Sweden. This was in 2018, where we did do an ICO for the sake of raising money, and it was wildly successful. But now we have Yamzu tokens in play around the world for the purposes of a semi-stable coin that essentially works like a fiat for the same purposes of fiat for the Yamzu platform. How do you feel about those? Have you looked into those, your affinity or dislike?
Yeah. So when it comes to specifically, like, are you kind of thinking about like blockchain and gaming, or more of kind of like the affinity of like tokenization?
Yeah, tokenization in gaming. So when people are taking now their coin or token, putting it into the system for the purposes of that exchange, that marketplace, or the purposes of whatever for the gaming. It could be buying a skin, it could be entering a new tournament.
Mm-hmm. The first thing I usually ask is, why is this better than using a traditional database, right? That's the first question I typically ask of, like, if I want to insert tokenized assets and open up free form trade, why can't I use a traditional database for that? So it's usually my first question, which some people clear and a lot of people don't. And then the second question I would kind of lean on is, if you're looking at large studios, they have walled gardens around them right now. Why would they want to open it up?
Yeah.
And so while I understand the appeal for wanting to have a little bit more of a free-flowing economy of, hey, I can take my asset in this game and I can sell it whenever I want and take that money and then go into this other game, looking at the history of like things like CSGO skin trading, which I love to do, is still probably my favorite game in the world, is CSGO. So if any of the viewers want to play with me, let me know. You can probably beat me because I'm not very good anymore. But I think those are kind of the two issues I typically see with wanting to tokenize assets. Though I understand the appeal and I get why it would be exciting. And personally as a user, I would love to be able to say, hey, I'm going to sell this skin here, and I'm going to take that really quickly move over here. It's hard to do that without paying a lot of different cuts along the way. Like, anyone who's sold an item on a Steam marketplace will understand this concept really well.
Yeah, and I think I agree 100%. I just see that as we go more digital, and then you have the unbeknownst, factor of nobody wants to touch cash anymore. That's going to pivot into no one wants to, use banks in their current state anymore. I'm not going to thump on blockchain and crypto at all. I'm just saying things evolve, people enhance, and systems grow out of their current form. In our second panel, we had Nolan Bushnell. Nolan Bushnell was the founder creator of Atari. Atari, people don't know this, was started as a coin-operated machine. And that's all he wanted to do. That's all he wanted to do. He even said it. He said, I just wanted to make more quarters. sometimes he'll admit he's not going to look for the Steve Jobs, how do I teleport to Mars?
Yeah.
He just wanted to make more quarters, but he innovated something in that moment that sparked you and I talking today. So, but what had happened was very quickly it went into console. So console made it franchisable, licensed, not franchisable, licensed. So dollars coming in, credit started being built. And now 30, 40 years later, we have blockchain and crypto and new forms of digital money that governments are adopting. Not small governments, very large governments are adopting for remittance, for transactions, and things that are going to essentially help their economies digitalize. So I just see that as the next phase for esports, or not esports, in gaming, because we went from a coin operated to a digital. PS Network, PlayStation Network for the last 10 years has allowed kids to gamble against each other playing FIFA tournaments. You could take your credit card and swipe it like you did in the early Apple Music days. So what's next, right? That's why I go to the tokenized systems or semi-stable coins, which look like tokens, because we need a next. And I think that's the most viable, secure version. But I do agree with you that there are going to be remittance problems.
I think there's definitely a big opportunity specifically for like a Bitcoin in gaming. And I think that, so if you look at like the float of Bitcoin versus the float of S&P 500, right? Like it definitely lends itself way more towards, it's a speculation trading game, right? Like, so, and you're floating about 30%. That's just the case,
right.
Which is what Bitcoin is, versus under 1% for most of the what you think of kind of like the stable markets.
Right.
And so I think what I'm excited to see is how gamers adopt using Bitcoin as payment methods. And there's no reason in my mind why a third-party studio wouldn't want to adopt accepting Bitcoin more regularly and making that a preferred payment option specifically. So I'm excited for that, and maybe that will bleed in itself into kind of more stable coins, which will improve liquidity for players, right?
Yeah, I always said if tomorrow Amazon, just Amazon.com came out and said, we are not accepting dollars, euros, pounds, nothing anymore. You have to buy Amazon token. And it's a 1-to-1 right now, but if we feel like it, we'll put it on the market and we'll go up against Microsoft coin. That I truly believe that's what's coming in the future. I don't want to put a year on it, but because that's their bravado, that's their prowess. That's how companies became branded in the 80s and 90s, by selling their own currency, which later became gift cards. And then gift cards, there's something like 500 billion, some outrageous number in gift cards that are never been used yearly, right? And that's the new, that's the new token. That's the new branding of your own money, of your own valued money. So I'm interested to see what gaming companies, you got V-Bucks. So this is right up your alley, right? You got V-Bucks in Fortnite. You got microtransactions going up the wazoo on mobile in Fortnite over the last 2 years. Is that something that excites you guys at Convoy, that side of the gaming?
Absolutely. Microtransactions is huge, right? Like, I mean, absolutely. And it's being deployed across, PC, console, mobile, in really, really interesting ways. When it comes to, do I think that this is going to continue? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're being trained to buy in a certain way, right? It's interesting is, we do live in a subscription economy too. And what I think is interesting to watch is we've gone from a world where it was kind of a pay-as-you-go model. So for those of us who remember actually buying minutes for your cell phones, right? I used to do that all the time. And now no one can even fathom doing that in North America, right? Or Europe, honestly, in most parts of Europe that I know. Most people are not buying minutes. They have a plan. It's unlimited data. And everything about us has been trained for a subscription. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify, all these I'm subscribers to, and I get to buy in. I know what it is. I'm in the garden. I get unlimited access to anything I want. Microtransactions is the complete opposite of that, which is really interesting. Where you're as a pay-as-you-go model, it's kind of reverting back to a moment where, hey, I need to go buy more. I need to buy a new skin. I need to buy this. As you're constantly being upsold, and so. In my mind, it's sort of like a counter to subscription-based economy, which is interesting. A lot of people
super interesting. I obviously, but I've never heard it said that way. That it's obviously the opposite, but equally both are obviously beneficial. Netflix tomorrow is not going to go to microtransactions, and vice versa. Fortnite is not going to go to a subscription model because they're getting kids sitting on the bathroom toilet all the way to the school bus, everything in between. Swipe the card, swipe the card, swipe the card. Now,
absolutely.
if you had to choose, would you invest right now into the current market of Fortnite and V-Bucks? Obviously, that's a massive investment. We're talking billions of dollars. But if you could, is that more exciting as an investor, getting after the high-level stuff that's established, or the low-hanging fruit that is still to come? Because to be honest, to prove yourself to get to where V-Bucks is damn near impossible, in startup terminology. It's 1 in a billion. So it might take another 5 years before we see the next V-Bucks, at that level. So what would you do as an investor, or some of our friends out there that are interested very high and very low?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on your goals, right? Like when I'm looking at an investment, I have to see a potential for at least a 10x on my money, right? Like that's the way we look at it. So we're investing at the early stage. So we're saying, hey, like within the span of 5 years, can I realistically expect this investment that I invest in to trade at 10x? And hopefully I get it for much more than that. So that's where we are, and so we're risk on. If your goal is to be more of a, I'm looking to move this dollar and get that 10 to 15% IRR on my money, I would encourage you to go look more at an epic late stage investment, which is the parent company of Fortnite, right? And they've done multiple rounds of private placements, and I think they actually just completed yet another one. So it depends on your investment goals. For me personally, I think that it would be great for you to have exposure in public companies as also in private early stage. Obviously, the alpha is at the early stage, generally speaking. And so I personally am a investor in many public companies in video gaming because I believe in the general growth of our industry, right? Yeah. I think, generally speaking, what we're seeing in gaming is kind of getting back to actually the really early point we made in the beginning of this call, is that more and more people are going to play video games tomorrow than they do today.
Yeah.
That's just the simple fact that we're seeing. And it comes down to the fact that, one, a really interesting concept to talk about is that as we become more technologically efficient, that frees up more time in the day. People are continuously spending more time and money on entertainment, and gaming continues to be the choice of entertainment for many, many people, because it's not only passive, which is Netflix and Amazon Prime, where you're watching something and you don't impact it, but it's actually social. And so this is the element that's interesting, is most people play video games, and most of them are playing a game at one point in time with another person. They're not just playing by themselves in their own room, right? And so I think something that I would tell your audience is transform in your minds the vision you have of your kids playing video games in their basement by themselves or on their computer alone. They're now playing video games with their friends, right? That's where we've moved. And so the cultural shift that we're having globally is that more and more people are going to game with each other. And so investing to that growth and that ecosystem, it can be done at the public stage and also early private. But I would encourage everyone on this call to look into this industry as a serious investment thesis for your portfolio.
Yeah, no, that's very well said, because I loved what you said there. There will be more gamers tomorrow than there were yesterday. That's where we're headed. And that's you could not have said that for blockchain in the last 10 years. You assume that, but you can't expect more Bitcoin or blockchain technology, Bitcoin buyers or technology users tomorrow than yesterday. That's just not true. And
it's tough, yeah.
And I can't even say that for esports. I can't say that there's going to be more esports competition tomorrow than there was yesterday. Obviously, as there's more titles, that means the industry grows. That's an oxymoron to say that there's not. But I'm saying that I agree with you that there's going to be more gamers, non-competitive, that are growing than gaming competitive gamers, because they're still going to want their kid to go to school, but it's okay to be exposed to gaming. I'll give you your $100 V-Bucks, but still get your degree. I see that at the baby boomers and our generation even, because we're as much as we say we're gamers, we're still educated sticklers. I don't want my kids sitting in the basement 15 hours a day, even though I'm managing, kids that do that. So I think there's a balance, and I think gaming always wins in that balance.
I think so too. And I think what's interesting where we're at, and I can't take credit for this quote. It's a guy named John Lai, who's one of the investors in Andreessen Horowitz on the game, very focused on gaming. And he said, we're still in this moment of where you still have to say, I am a gamer, which is interesting, right? Yeah. Whereas you don't say that if you're a Netflix watcher or a movie watcher. Everyone just assumes that you watch Netflix, and everyone assumes that you watch movies and that you listen to music. Most people in the world listen to music at different varying levels, but we still have to clarify, I'm a gamer, right? And that shows that it still hasn't hit the spot of just expected behavior. And that is, I think, where we're going to go in, not too near future of it is expected that you play video games. And I'm excited for that personally, because I am a gamer as well.
Right. I think that's very well said. We are gamers at heart. I am too. I shamelessly will say I've spent way too much time on World of Warcraft a decade ago, a little less than a decade ago, and that was a game that taught me more social skills, ironically, than ever before in the social world, because I got to meet so many different people that you think you meet in the world, but you don't have the balls or the bravado to go up to normal people in the world, black, white, Mexican, Iranian, Arabic, everything in between. But in the digital world, if someone says, hey, I'm, this and this culture, you don't even blink. You don't even ask those questions. So it teaches you social skills that go complete the mission, leadership, working together, camaraderie. This is a real thing. I mean this to my core. So getting our parents to buy in on that, or getting the older, because the money and the capital markets are still in the hands of the older generation. So we'll end with a piece of advice and a couple things of how to shake your tin can as a fund or family office. Now we're in the 8 figures. How do we get in the 9 or even 10 figures, which is coming around the corner? You're seeing these valuations in the 10 figures. Those are valuations. But I think you just said it. Epic raised $700 million, I think, for a valuation of 4.
Yeah.
They could.
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but that sounds about right.
They could have raised more. They could have raised less. The point wasn't the number. The point was that they went and raised, that astronomical amount. A lot of them are not listing either because they're Chinese owned. Talk a little bit about Convoy. What are you guys doing in your second fund? What is it going to be different or similar to your first fund? Is there anything our audience can do to get ready for, to help out with? Because I know the appetite in the Middle East is obviously for investment dollars much larger than anywhere else in the world. Just look at Silicon Valley. But, what can they look forward to? How can these guys participate in these type of funds? Because as you know, in the Middle East, family offices, angel investors, and funds pretty much run the show. So how can they get involved with either you guys or anybody in this space?
Yeah. And so, for anyone who's interested in learning more about our fund, feel free to reach out to me. My name is Jason at convoy.co. I can post that later somewhere for you guys.
Right now for you.
Yeah. So the way I would encourage people to play this space depends on your comfortability with the sector, right? One of the best ways is to, and obviously I am speaking to a personal bias here because I am an investment manager for this specific subsector, is to partner with a manager or managers, right? Which there's a plethora of good ones in this industry. So I'm happy to point you guys in the directions of the ones I think I would put my money with personally, that isn't outside of us. So I would say partner with the manager first. That'd be great. At the early and the late stage, there's great opportunities in both of those. Secondly, what I would tell you is subscribe to a couple of news sources that I would recommend. Master the Meta is a guy named Aaron Bush, who is a great newsletter. I would encourage you guys all to go subscribe to that. I don't know if Aaron, you're watching this. I would also tell you, hey, we have our own newsletter. Come talk to me about joining that distribution as well. Matthew Ball is Matthew Ball VC is a great writer on the sector. I would say go read, go understand, try to understand this very, very unique form of entertainment. And something I would encourage you guys to do is start small. Don't push all in on one thing. Obviously, there's a lot of education gained with making a few small investments. And so partner with funds, get investment into a fund, and then ask for direct allocations. That is something we've done with many family offices in our fund, our current fund. To get into your question about what changes for Fund 2, for us, we're increasing the size of our fund quite a bit. And so what we're doing is we're just going to take larger ownership positions at the same stage. So instead of taking like 5% of the company, we're going to hopefully take 10 to 15. That's kind of more the thought. And we're going to stick pretty close to our same thesis. We're going to stay focused on the technology layer. You nailed it, Kevin. Picks and shovels. That is what we do. That is what we like to do. Yeah. And usually the reason I pitch that to people is I say, look, I like knowing that a service that I'm investing into is not predicated on the success of one title or another title. And everyone talks about the Fortnites and everyone talks about the Call of Duties, but no one talks about like the H1Z1, which was a huge flop, right? Like there's tons of $100 million titles that just die. And a lot of people kind of look at that and say, hey, that's like investing into a movie. And it is. There are some people that can invest and pick the right games very, very well. I think there's definitely an investment argument to be made for that. So for us, not a lot changing from a thesis standpoint. We're going to stay doing what we do, and we invest into North America, Europe. So we have looked into Latin America as well. And maybe we'll expand our geo just a tad, but still focused on the Western markets for Fund 2.
So yeah, you took my last question. I was going to say, because our audience is UK and Middle East, MENA region, Dubai specifically, that's a region where it's always, in any sector of business, it gets disrespected as the last region, but it is the largest single largest growing market of mobile users in the world over the next decade. Everybody knows the Middle East, an average iPhone is about 1.84. So that means almost 2 iPhones in everybody's hand. That's an average. That's just how it goes in that country. And internet speeds are faster than here in LA by a factor of 10. So they're ready to go. They just need a bit of support and ideas to come there and drive there. So that's a big factor of what we're doing at GEMA, is to support that industry, because there are investment dollars there. They just need new innovative projects that are services, just like we talked about today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything there that, like, a Convoy specific? Because I know you said EU, so you kind of already answered it. But Latin America, you mentioned, and some of the regionals.
Yeah, and I think a part of that is also a unique thing about our background, right? The 3 partners is we actually all 3 grew up overseas as kids, and so. Very familiar with. Grew up in a lot of different places, but Mozambique, Nigeria, Bolivia, Brazil. I never lived in the Middle East, but my parents actually did work in Saudi Arabia for several years. So I've had a little bit more.
You understand perspective.
I hopefully. And I think something, Kevin, you said really well, which I did want to highlight for everyone on the call, which I love, is gaming. Gaming is one of the best connectors for people that it exists, period, because automatically you're on the same level playing field, in the sense that it doesn't matter if you're 6'9" and you're 5'1" and you're playing Counter-Strike. You guys are playing the exact same type of character. It doesn't matter if you're from Lebanon, or if you're from Sweden. You're playing the same game. And it is a great connector. And something that I loved about my upbringing personally is I went to a lot of international schools, and you're forced to talk to a lot of people that you have very little in common with, truthfully, very little, but you have just a few things, right? And grabbing onto those few things, I think, is, not to get too philosophical, I think is such a positive thing for us as a global kind of society. And I would encourage everyone, view gaming as a way that it can break down barriers that did exist with other people. And I'm very excited to continue to support that industry as it does attack that. So I love that you made that point. It's a really good point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your words for that, because it now more than ever, in a time of not just the crisis of economics, but socioeconomical, emotional, there's just a lot going on. And in our industry, we need to realize that these avatars are just avatars. Whether you put, a white, a tan, a black, a Mexican, an Iranian, whatever you replace as that adjective for that avatar, because you are that avatar behind the mouse or the controller, whatever you are racially, socioeconomically, it all ends when we press start or when we press enter into the game, or Warzone these days. I'm playing just Phil. I just press Phil because I want to hear other people. I want to talk to other people. And sometimes I fake it like I'm not listening, but I hear them. And I want to listen to the frustrations. And sometimes you hear stuff in the background and that's gaming, baby. That's gaming. And we're coming closer together. And it's beautiful for it. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. Looking forward to many more of these. Everybody, I put Mr. Jason's email right there. We'll get his newsletter sent out to the people that attended today. And then for anybody involved, please reach out to Convoy and everything in between that we've talked about. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kevin. Take care.
Yeah, take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
See ya. Bye. So yeah, we had a panel today where we got Chris Reed get on with us from Level Up Experience, and he talked about what the esports landscape looks like, and with Jocelyn in the first episode, and then Jason jumped on with me. Hello, Jocelyn, in the second episode, talking about gaming, gamers, and all things technology.
Yeah, awesome panel, Kevin. That was great. You guys really killed it, and so much to learn from. Obviously, the investments and what Convoy is doing in the space. So it was really great.
We learned a lot about what the affinity to international looks like too. So for the international friends out there, get involved, get going on the gaming space. I learned a lot from your call from Chris and what the landscape looks like in esports and where not to. What I learned from your conversation, opposite to what I think you'll say with our conversation, was I learned from Chris and yourself. I got a lot of warnings. I got a lot of good information that if people were taking notes, we're going to save a lot of people a lot of money. And we're going to save people a lot of headache, because people like Chris and yourself have done that before and have paved a certain road that some of our low-hanging fruit investors need to take a look at.
Yeah, definitely. Really a lot to look at, especially when you're trying to get in the space and, invest, deploy capital. There's so many different features and, specific things to look at. So tread lightly, as, we learned in the second panel. You can't just jump in like a lot of people are trying to do. Right. Just like any startup, any business that you would essentially jump into, there's so many different factors that need to be looked at, and heavy due diligence helps.
I look at everybody's excitement getting into the industry. I think that everybody's looking for their identity and their, affinity in the industry. And I just don't know if being desperate to join it is going to help, kind of like what we saw in other industries. Learn from whatever you can attribute and add value to, because there's so much. I mean this to my core. There's just so much to do in gaming and esports. It's a massive job creator. There's jobs that have not been created that are going to be. So why not you? Why not your company? Why not your team create these jobs? Create the job that you want. And if you don't see it in gaming or esports, go and create the job that you want.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
Yeah.
I think there are so many different jobs that are coming out, and I think, obviously technology is playing a huge part in growing the employment landscape, what people can and cannot do in the esports. Esports space, I would say, is even more of a job creator these days. There's so many different things that are taking place, and so many different roles that are being created, right? So interesting to see. And on the gaming side of things, it's been the same way for a long time, but newer technology coming out, and so many things to learn from that. And I think 5 years from now is going to be a whole new different landscape. I think something that we were talking about earlier is virtual experiences, and the merge between gaming and esports, and traditional just music is another one that we could get into, which is getting music into a virtual experience, and the gamification of traditional experiences. That's the game changer right there. And the more that we continue to merge, the more jobs, the more the economy is gonna benefit, and the more potential startups that are going to be available for funding.
And the smaller the world becomes. The bigger we think we get, the smaller we feel, because we're closing down, we're breaking down the barriers, and it's just crazy, because as we get more of these products, it truly does feel like a very small world. Next week we have education. We're going to talk to CEO of Geekleets and see what they're doing. Geekleets is a name everyone's heard of by now, and I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation. And in the following sessions, we have federations, associations, where we're going to talk to a few federations and associations from the MENA region, from Asia, North Africa, and Central Africa. We got our friends' big announcement coming from the MENA region in about 2 weeks, I think we can say. We're going to have them on from the MENA region, specifically Turkey. We have an announcement to make with them, and the things that we're going to be doing over the next 6 months in the MENA region. So thank you again, everybody from the MENA region, mostly with us today from Dubai and in UK. Jay, thank you so much for always coming from Dubai. It's a late night there. Stay cool and stay happy.
Yeah, thanks for everyone that jumped on today. It was really fun, and obviously one of our better topics that Kevin and I really love to talk about is the investment side of things. So not the last one, I'm sure. Like we learned, I think, from our two discussions, is that we could have really segmented them out a lot more. There's so many different things to talk. We didn't even get into, I would say, the traditional side of investing, into like ETFs and the stock market, and
right.
So that's another side of the investment space that we didn't even get into, which is going public and companies going public, and the investment on that front. So definitely put together some of that in the future, and look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Next week for education, like I said, CEO of Geekleets and the Dean of the School of Sports Management at University of San Francisco, which is Jossam and I's alma mater. So Dr. Dan is going to be joining us, Jay, next week. So a good one next week. Thank you, everybody. We'll catch you next week.